If you ask just about any SVS student what they're going to do today, chances are you're not going to get a very articulate answer. Maybe because they don't want to talk to you, but it's probably because they don't know. But if you ask them like what you're interested in, I mean, that's a whole different story. You'll probably get a very, very articulate answer. And a student not knowing exactly what they're going to do, but knowing what they like, just going to immerse themselves in whatever interest that they have, whatever activity.
It's a beautiful campus. It is soothing to come into. I feel like when you pull into the parking lot at school, it's just kind of escaping into our own little world where we can do whatever we want. We can do what we need to do without people interfering with that.
You see how many green cards we have?
I gave you all of mine.
We have like 20.
There's lots of different types of kids who come to Sudbury Valley School. Some have been here their whole lives. Some have just been here a couple of years. I spent 4 years at Sudbury Valley, and in my thesis, I split up those 4 years into a different section because each one I had a uniquely different learning experience, and I had a higher order of thinking every successive year. In my first year, I really spent most of that year just playing video games. One particular video game, actually. A lot of parents and a lot of people who don't know the Sudbury model ask me, well, don't kids just play video games all day? And well, what if my kid just plays video games all day? And I mean, that's exactly what I did, and I certainly have no regrets. I did have a pretty close-knit group of friends who all shared the same exact interests as I did. And we were intensely involved in that community. I mean, it was just like anything else that you would be really intensely involved in. It just happened to be video games for us.
How do you control it? Here you go.
How will you ever survive their onslaught of death?
They're just evil bouncy balls.
Why?
Okay, I found a safe spot. Actually, gotta fix this glitch.
Yeah, well, in a couple minutes you'll be blown away by my programming prowess.
We studied those video games just like an economist would study the stock market. And I think anything that you put effort into, that type of effort into, would yield some growth in any manifestation.
A couple years ago at the picnic, I got together a 5-on-5 basketball game just because we had a lot of players here and it just seemed like a good idea. And after that was done, I realized I had a lot of fun. So when the school year started up, I just decided to start up my own basketball tournament.
Hey guys, there's 10 seconds left.
No one is forced to play. If you want to play, then we all have a great time. And there's little kids and there's big kids and there's medium-sized kids. We really try and make it as fair as possible. Athletics of the school take a big part in more than just my life. People are running around, playing tag, playing sports, throwing around frisbee, swinging. I mean, when it's sunny and it's nice outside, you see people running around. And when it's raining outside and there's snow on the ground, we still play basketball at school.
Can someone take a video? Press the center button and start filming. What? Press what? Center button. Okay. Is it filming? Yeah. Alright, point at me. Hey. There's escalator rock, there's either lunge rock, turtle rock, and there's another name for it, but I forget. Staircase rock.
Justin, what are you doing?
Climbing.
Are you getting up this way?
Yes, it's going. It's me a challenge. This is more challenging.
Yeah.
What? That? Yeah. I think it's possible. Well, everything's possible.
Yeah.
Before coming to Sudbury Valley School, I'd played guitar. It was a growing interest in the background. And then the summer after the first year, I spent some time at Berklee College of Music in a guitar program. And it was like I had used my ears for the first time. In my second year, I was spending lots more time rehearsing for the SBS music productions that we put on a couple of times a year, and I was focusing a lot on that stuff. And it shifted from that all video games to almost all music throughout that year, and that was my major focus.
I really like being able to focus on something that really takes my interest and having as much time as I want really to focus on it or not focus on it if I'm not interested.
Upside down. Good. And put something in there. Whatever color you want.
You can mix colors.
Can you mix it in here? Good.
They actually took away my art program at my old school, and I couldn't get through the day without art, and now I can do it all day, and I have the freedom to do it and to explore different mediums and explore different techniques. And I think that's really important in anything you do, to have that sort of freedom.
Let's stop there. I think it's good, Elizabeth. I think what I'm going to do is hook you and June together at this point, because I just wanted to make sure that you were solid with the song, that you're solid. And she knows the piano part.
Yeah.
So now the two of you will put together an awesome band.
Cool.
I mostly play classical music. This year I've been focusing on Debussy, Haydn, and now I'm working on a Chopin piece. At the moment I've got most of it roughed in, but I'm just working on this new section that I haven't really looked at before. I love having the pianos here at school because I can play just about whenever I want. There's a second piano up in the barn, so if this one's busy, I've always got another one. So I can practice for 3 hours a day if I want to.
I mean, seriously, that monster is not big, but it's actually amazingly scary.
The thing that I like about making the movies is that I like when you're done and you get to watch it and say that you made that movie. The scene that I'm working on is about where the major gets taken captive by the humongous and is put in with all the other little kids that were taken by the humongous.
Well, it first started out as a box, obviously. Then we got some foam pieces. Aaron, what did we do to stick these on? Duct taped them on. And then we got expanding foam and then had it as a snow monster. And then we spray painted it for the spring monster.
Yesterday, when I was filming, I had 15 kids up here. And at times that was chaotic. We're 6 days into filming and we have 3 days left.
This is a fundraiser for the Music Corp. All the money that we're raising goes to the Music Corp to help buy instruments and supplies so we can play more music at the school.
I know.
What pickle?
I'm getting one meal, so yes, I am getting a pickle.
How much? No.
One. Does anyone here want an extra pickle? Take the pickle then. Yeah. I don't like pickles.
I love pickles.
I hate pickles.
I love them.
How do you hate pickles?
These pickles are awesome.
The Music Corp is a bunch of people who like music, so they have meetings and you can be a director, so you get to vote on stuff for the Music Corp for what they buy. And they have meetings whenever they want to decide something important that has to do with musical instruments or fundraising or something like that. The shows happen 4 times a year, and people start getting ready for them since like the last show. People start rehearsing and practicing and deciding what songs they want. I'm usually in the shows every year, and it's a lot of fun to be in them and see everybody, and usually the whole school goes to them.
My third year was a little bit of a contrast to the first two, in that in the first two I had like a hobby that I was doing all the time. I was always busy with that. And then my third year, I spent a lot more time in the sewing room, which is a particular room of Sudbury Valley School that sees like the most amount of traffic, the most amount of conversation. It's a very, very crazy place. And I spent a lot of time in there just conversing and observing and listening to all these types of things being talked about. My most critical thinking was done during that year. I spent a lot of time just writing essays because I had talked so much in the sewing room. We had so many both strange and intense conversations. There was a lot of things that I wanted to not forget. A lot of quotes from the day. And at first I was just like jotting them down, and then eventually I was writing full essays in an effort to not lose any of the stuff that I thought was productive. Well, towards the end of my third year, I came to a couple of conclusions, and I realized that while I absolutely love music, that I wouldn't make a career out of it. And I had sort of a intense, absolute passion for cognitive sciences and neuroscience, which came out of thinking about how we perceive music and how music is such a fundamental aspect of our cognitive processes. And more I decided that I was going to need to work up to a traditional college education to be able to go into this field. I call my fourth year like my adult year. I worked full-time job as a computer technician, but I also spent a lot of time formulating the plans and putting together what I would have to do, what I'd have to accomplish to be able to get accepted by a university. There's a quality about Sudbury Valley School kids that, whether they like it or not, they're absolutely unique. They have a really, really unique educational background.
The school gave me the gift of time to let my own interests rise to the surface. When you sit down to paint, you don't just sit and paint. You have to think about what you're doing and why. Any creative effort, perhaps any effort at all, requires a great deal of thought, even reading a book. You don't just read a book, you think about what you read, otherwise you're doing it for nothing. The school gave us the gift of time to relax, to have those things come to the surface that were there. It gave us time for reflection, for the introspection that you need to really develop your own creativity. I think that's a remarkable thing.
I'll call this school meeting to order. Everyone could please first turn off your cell phones and direct your attention to the results of previous school meetings. As the chairman of the school meeting, I am essentially the chief executive officer of the school, which means that I do a lot of things from signing staff contracts, and also I'm ex officio on a lot of the important committees, which means that I run a lot of them. I'm automatically, as chairman, a member of those. So things like managing the budget or dealing with staffing and admissions. I also run the weekly school meetings and kind of just help to manage the day-to-day school affairs. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll vote. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. The school meeting is extremely important because it's basically what runs the school. Everything is decided in the school meeting. And, we've delegated to the JC to deal with judicial matters, and we've delegated to certain clerks and committees to deal with things. But ultimately, school meeting is the authority.
Everyone that comes to the school is a school meeting member. Everyone has an equal vote. And I feel like the community of the school really teaches kids that they're just as equal as any other person here. And I think that translates in the school meeting.
It doesn't matter if you're 4 or 16 or 75, everyone gets one vote. Everyone gets to talk. And we're all equals, and we make the decisions together by majority vote.
The world and the school is constantly changing and evolving, and we do modify rules every now and then, and sometimes when we change one, we'll realize that didn't quite work out, and we'll go back and amend it or fix it. And sometimes we realize there's new issues in the world that need tending to.
We think about everything, and we discuss everything, and we debate everything. And if we didn't have the structure that we have of having 2 motions, a well-run school meeting where everyone gets their voice heard, the decisions that we made would not be as good.
So at every school meeting, we have an agenda like this, and it has everything that we plan to discuss, every item of business.
Can we have a report from the clerks? Francis.
We have 5 finished, 0 new, and 0 work in progress.
So we are now discussing regular JC business, which usually takes about the bulk of school meeting. So the school meeting reviews all the reports and sentences and charges that the JC decided on. And sometimes they decide to change things, sometimes they don't. And we also deal with anything that has been referred to the school meeting. So that's usually more serious cases that the JC has decided they can't handle within their power.
And then we move on to second readings, which is motions that we'll be voting on that day. And then written agenda, which is motions that were just put in, so we kind of discuss those and throw them back and forth. And then we'll vote on them next week. And then there's open agenda, which, if there's an issue that wasn't in the written agenda, anybody can bring up. So you can say pretty much anything on the floor. And when that's over, we're adjourned.
It's exciting and it's interesting, but the reason that it's the most interesting to me is because I really care what's going on in school. I mean, a lot of people, when there's something going on in JC that they think is important, will go to JC, and the same thing with school meeting. And I think it's really, really great because I learned a lot from being JC clerk, and I am learning a lot from being school meeting chairman, and the whole process is one of the things that people benefit most from this school. Is there any discussion of the results?
We'll ask her. I will get one. All right, we have Isabella. Stand over there. So Danny brought you up in the office yesterday. Isabella was screaming in the office and hall and screamed at me when I told her to calm down.
Oh.
What happened?
Okay. I was in the office talking.
The JC is a group of kids and staff from the school, and we deal with when people break rules. And basically how the JC works is that if you see someone breaking a rule or they do something to you that you don't like, you can write a complaint, and then the JC reviews them, investigates them, and figure out kind of what happened and whether they broke a rule or not.
It's kind of like jury duty in a way. You're chosen, you've got to show up on your day, 11 o'clock, you've got to stay there through the whole thing. You get a vote, you get to sit there. And we have a staff that joins us, and together we all decide. We all make the decision, we all make the choice of what the people are going to get as their charge, as their sentence, and it all works out.
All in favor? All opposed, report
Motion passes. All right, want to call Sam in here?
The way they made that is just, I think, genius. I mean, you get all kinds of perspectives from a little kid that might see only certain parts of the problem, all the way up to a staff member who might see beyond the problem, or someone my age who might even understand my reasoning more so than other people. I mean, the best part about it is that it's not just a kid my age just saying, look, he's my friend, so I'm going to let him off. I mean, it's all these ideas coming together and making a final judgment.
We have a lot of different rules, and most of them are basically common sense. But one of the biggest ones and one of the first ones we made was called infringement, which is basically that everyone has a right to, go about their day peacefully and be able to pursue what they want to pursue without people harassing them or being mean to them. So it's basically that you can't do anything to anybody that they don't want you to do.
It's very nice to have this feeling in the community that if someone is bugging you or doing something you don't like, that you don't have to put up with it or you don't need to get an adult. You can say, stop or I'll bring you up.
Well, when somebody writes a complaint, there's a line and they write witnesses. And so before we even call anybody in, the complainant, who's the person who wrote the complaint, or the person that they're writing the complaint against, we sort of talk about it as a JC and decide whether we want to talk to the person who wrote the complaint first, or maybe get one of the witnesses, sort of like, a bystander that wasn't really involved, especially if it's a complaint which, might be, well, so-and-so did this to me, but maybe he was provoked and the complaint doesn't say that. And you get to hear it from all sides and figure out really what happened from everybody, not just the people who were involved.
And from that, you'll write a report that goes with the testimony. You could write in it what people specifically said, what they didn't.
Back in public high school, you do something, and even if the principal might feel like you didn't necessarily do such a bad thing, sometimes he would stick to the rule book and even give you a really bad, weekend of coming to school or something like that when you were just like 5 minutes late to class or something. Here, for example, if you break a rule, even though there's no rule like that, you get to voice your opinion, and whoever wrote the complaint gets to voice their opinion. They get to actually come to a fair conclusion. I mean, you might have still broken a rule, so you will get a punishment, but it might not be as severe. It might not be, a strict, already set out rule book for that. So, I mean, that's just the best thing you could really ever ask for, I think, for being a person my age or even a little kid, So I definitely love that part about school, and I respect it a lot.
I think there's definitely a satisfaction in, for me, working towards what the truth is, how you're going to get at it, how you're going to figure it out. And once you're done with it, it's an awesome feeling.
I think that the school's really cool, and I think it's really cool how people are allowed to have a say in stuff. Because the person who got brought up and the person who wrote the complaint, they both get to say what happened, and then they get to agree if they think that's fair or not.
I think one of the keys is that it's a government by the peers. And I think that's one of the things that really hits home with people. It's your friends and the people that you see every day and want to spend time with who are saying, hey, don't do that, I like you. But you really can't do that here. And you can't do it in your life.
Hey, Nell, could you stand over there behind David? Thanks. There was a Hershey's candy bar wrapper littered yesterday with the initials ED. Okay. Do you ever get things initialed ED, or is it always ND?
We are very clear about our procedures, and everyone knows them from the minute they come into the JC for the first time. It's explained to them, younger kids and older kids, and a 6-year-old is going to understand how to deal with something on a procedural level. They say, this is how it's done, and this is the procedure, and this is what order everything's going to happen in, and they understand both, in the JC and in the school meeting. And if they're going to go into something like that in life after leaving school, or while they're still at school, they're really going to understand that there is a procedure and that they have to follow it and how to follow it. It's explained to them.
I think one of the things that sums it up is one of our most important rules is preamble, which says that all school meeting members are responsible for protecting the atmosphere of the school, which is of freedom and trust and fairness and order. That is just how we exist in school. We have a lot of rules, we really do. But all the rules are there to make sure that everyone can exist freely.
I've been told that as a kid, I'd make friends with everybody. I'd be in the grocery store and make friends with every person that passed, and I was smiling and laughing, and then I went to school. And in this school, you had to be that kind of kid. The kid that would sit like this in the classroom and never would daydream about anything and never would, possibly raise their voice or, play around with the other kids or I don't know. I don't even understand the type of kid they wanted, but it was a very specific kind. And I didn't fit that. I remember thinking I was stupid. That I was stupid, that I was this failure. And yeah, I just remember being so sad at that age. I was really sad. I think it was the only time at that age that I was just so sad. I would come off the bus with my head down, and sometimes I would cry, and when crying didn't work anymore, I just gave up. And that, I think, was when my parents got worried. Okay, something needs to change. And I came here, and it was so fast. It was like you went from this really unhappy child to this happy kid where you can, and it makes sense because when you come here at that age especially, the world is open to you. You can explore, you can do anything you want to do. I mean, And I think kids need that. It's something I think in society we've more and more forgotten just how much we need kids to explore, and I was suddenly allowed to explore. This was a place where you walked in and it was like there are these kids that want to learn. These were kids that just were learning in their own way and happy and exploring, and it felt like this utopian idea of all these kids doing all these things. Yeah, I loved the other kids. I had friends immediately, and I think to its testament, it's a place that also fosters friendship in a very different way, because you're letting kids explore and you're letting kids kind of roam and figure out who they are. They're learning the interpersonal skills in a way that they can't do when they're stuck behind a desk. Because in traditional schooling, they can pass a note to a kid, or I don't know, nowadays maybe with a cell phone or something, but that's the most interaction besides the scheduled blocks that they have. And those scheduled blocks are, recess, where they can finally run around, and they're supposed to somehow in that 1 hour a day, or maybe if they're really lucky, that hour and a half a day during lunch too, somehow they're supposed to build social skills and interpersonal skills. It's not enough. But here, you can do that all day. So kids naturally learn how to deal with conflict. They naturally learn how to deal with the social and interpersonal skills that they need as they get older, even not just in a career, but as children growing, to gain self-esteem, to be a successful kid. People have a lot of focus on being a successful adult, but to be a successful kid, you need these skills. And here we got that in spades. This school caters to all different kinds of kids. There are quieter kids, there are louder kids, there are kids that are more what people would call more book smart, and kids that are more, I want to say, experiential. They want to be out there, hands-on, doing things. The beauty is that because you can explore anything, it allows any kid to really thrive. And that's something that traditional schooling just does not do. One of the really powerful things about this place is that because you have so many different kids that learn differently, work differently, have different skill sets, you're creating a breeding ground of kids that are learning from each other these different skill sets. And your peers become your mentors as well. That's really important. That's the thing, people think classes don't happen here. They do, all the time. All the time. Kids are learning all the time here, and they sit down and they study here. I went here, I graduated, I loved it here. When I think back on my life, I think these were formative years that were so important to my development and my health and my being, what I consider actually, I think I became a pretty good person overall.
It's a place where people are encouraged to be themselves.
A place where you can learn to just be yourself.
It makes me feel way more free.
The sense of community, definitely.
It's a lot more loving and caring.
Being here, I have so many passions, and I kind of know that there's a lot of things and a lot of opportunities that I'm going to take.
Sudbury Schools is the first democratic school in Ireland.
There's no curriculum, no classes. That's not to say that learning doesn't happen. It just happens in a very different way.
It's always hands-on, do it together, learn as you go.
It's based on the principle that people are natural learners and that what you need to do is facilitate them.
We don't teach, we're not teachers. I see my role as bringing in new things to inspire students.
Any decisions that are made by the whole school community. When you hand that responsibility over, they kind of run things as good as or better than we do.
I can make any decision I want to for myself.
people follow the rules because it's out of respect for people around them.
For me, it's about trusting the children. Hand them their education and say, what do you need?
There is no average day.
You can choose if you want to play music or do art.
I'm teaching myself Japanese and astronomy.
I'm doing my degree in politics, philosophy and economics.
Got a pretty good toolbox now, and we bring it in, and we made lightsabers. It's been so much fun. Like, we've made boats and circuits with just lights. We've made alarms for certain doors, so when people open them, alarm goes off with just tin foil and a couple of wires and a battery. We did lemon batteries that weren't very successful, but sometimes the learning is in the failing.
Did a big project on dinosaurs.
They did this presentation on dinosaurs where they had this book and they gave out quizzes. They had like models for the dinosaurs, like to scale with a human model of clay.
They get immersed in something. At one point it was Nerf guns, and they were all mad about Nerf guns, but it evolved into filmmaking.
We're struggling for money, and our rent is very high.
We need funds because we're completely self-funded, 100% self-funded. We get money from nowhere.
We strive to be as accessible as possible, so we charge a sliding scale fee.
It all depends on what your yearly income is, so we make less than other schools would.
What we're doing has the potential to influence the school system across Ireland. There's already another school opening in September in Sligo. There'll be one in Cork and Galway next year, I'd say, and more to come.
It's really important, and I think it will benefit so many people now and in the future.
So we can stay open and not have to go back to regular school and make my life miserable.
If they know anybody who's struggled in traditional education, if they look back on their schooling and they think, oh God, like that didn't get the best out of me. If you believe any of that, then you should donate.
We would like to stay open and keep being happy. Donate.
Well, the basic philosophy at Alpine Valley School is we believe everyone's born naturally curious. All we do is to create a safe and supportive environment where that creativity or that curiosity can flourish, where students can be treated as the individuals that they are and respected accordingly, and where they can learn what they most need to learn in the ways and at the pace that are most appropriate for them. Because here you see, it's not so much the child fitting the system, it's more about the system fitting the child.
Alpine Valley changed my life. I came into the school very withdrawn, very unsure of myself. By the first week, I had just blossomed. There just was this unfolding of this feeling of tremendous self-worth and appreciation, and that people saw me and liked me for who I was, and not, that I had performed a certain way on a test, or that I had, competed in sports, that it was just me, and that was good enough. And so that was a huge change for me, and one that I think has dramatically affected the rest of my life, that I still have that feeling of just intrinsic worth and happiness.
I've spent my adult life working with adults, trying to reconnect them with their sense of personal purpose, what they care about, who they are, their own sense of authenticity. And it occurred to me, why do we have to do this? It's because when you put children in a typical educational system, you break them away from their sense of self. You separate them from their sense of passion, who they are, what they care about. And when we learned about Alpine Valley School, wait a minute, here's a place that actually encourages and supports children in their own integrity, their own authenticity.
This is about kids. This is an education based on the child, driven by the child, inspired by children, really. And yet there's this community and this place for that to happen in, an environment where children can be part of something while figuring things out and pursuing things for themselves.
There's no other school like Alpine Valley. It's completely
a new paradigm of giving kids genuine freedom. And we may think we give our kids freedom when we give them choices within a certain parameter, for example, whether it's at home or it's at school. It's something different to give them genuine freedom, and something else happens.
The Open School is a self-directed, democratic school serving kids ages 5 to 18.
The children are able to self-direct, meaning they can choose to engage in different activities throughout the day that interest them the most.
The staff help with projects, or like if you need to find out information, they'll help you.
The Open School is different from my previous school because I get to decide what I do with my time, and I really enjoy that.
It's unlike other schools. Well, it's unlike all schools, to be honest. In that regular schools, it's just people telling you what to do all the time. When you go to the Open School, you don't feel like you're going to a school. You feel like you're going to a community where, I guess you could say, everything is equal.
I was going to go into fashion design, which, with the help of Open School, I can fully do.
The Open School is a rare space where the human spirit is trusted rather than controlled or manipulated.
The Open School is a democratic school, which means everyone in the school, students and staff, have the same voice. Everyone gets one vote to decide everything from what the rules are, how the budget gets spent, even hiring, firing of staff.
Our country values independence and interdependence and being able to take responsibility and ownership of your life and making something from nothing. All of those things are values of the place we live. And so the Open School is saying, let's make those the values of our education.
Being democratic also means that we care about what the students think. We ask for their opinions and try to get them actively engaged in the governance of the school because we want to create a school for them. At the Open School, kids have the ability to make their own choices. And this means that sometimes they'll make wrong choices, but that's not a problem because when they make wrong choices, they learn how to tell wrong choices from right choices, how to think independently and critically.
They learn to take responsibility for themselves. They grow their own personal drive, self-discipline by practicing those things. They don't automatically turn them on at 18.
So, it can be really confronting and it can be really difficult, even though it sounds really easy. Oh, you get to do, and I'm using quotes, like whatever you want. But within this framework, the work to do whatever you want, it's the work of being an adult.
We are a microcosm of our country, and we treat the children the same way so that by the time they're adults, they're hitting the ground running.
At the Open School, students can see that they get to determine their own life, not others, not their parents, not the staff, not society. They get to direct their own course and follow their own inner calling and be themselves.
When you focus on mental health, and by that I mean people who are valued for who they are, who are accepted, you end up with people who are self-disciplined, focused, who know who they are, know where they're going in life, and therefore actually achieve more.
We're teaching kids that they need to understand how to create their own happiness, their own meaning and agency in the world.
The long view is that you've been given time to figure out who you are, and so really you can dive in at a much more advanced place.
The Open School is a place where I can be an artist,
where I can be a scientist,
where I can be a musician,
a programmer,
baker,
business owner.
The Open School is a place where I can be myself.
Seriously, being at school here, it allows you to think, imagine, research what you like,
to climb trees really high. Most importantly, so important that it takes up 2 of my fingers, have fun.
I think my favorite thing about being a student here is the freedom to pursue your passions, which is basically the school.
You must just find what you want to do, and it's most likely happening, and if it's not happening, then you can make it happen. So that's the kind of freedom you have here.
At the beginning, you're like, instead of doing school where kids do whatever they want all day and everybody's like, fun! As we all have this idea that if we don't get told like what to do and what to learn and how to learn it, that there's no learning, and there's learning everywhere.
We're sold on a myth. All of us are, as parents, as kids. The myth is that if you attend school and you get good grades, and go to college and get good grades, that you're guaranteed success in life.
I don't want them to become experts in doing what other people want them to do. They have to figure out what they want to do. And nobody can figure that out for them.
You need to know who you are, what you want in that moment, have an ability to figure out how to get it. We give kids a tremendous amount of respect and room to figure those things out.
I sent her to public school kind of like an experiment. I felt like I sent in this really like filled and happy and joyful human being. The interest in learning totally faded. Her self-confidence totally faded. That's just not the environment here. I saw her slowly kind of coming back out of her shell and just being herself, and what's more important than that?
It's a safe community where you can feel comfortable and you're not pressured to do anything.
I've always just cared a lot about ending the oppression of young people. We're really about giving people the space, this time where life is the curriculum, a scaled down version of the larger world.
You're learning more than you think. You're teaching yourself. I never got taught how to read, and I know how to read.
Think and Rely and Listen that we have here is a much more positive communication to the kids, and that is, we trust you.
Like, we have this musical. We found other people who are interested in acting. We found someone to direct it. Now she's a staff member here. She loved it so much she couldn't help but stay.
It's definitely a collaborative environment.
1, 2, 3, I try as hard as I can because I wanted to do this. I asked to do this. I got into this.
I just joined Sudbury this year. I'm interested in digital art. I'm at a place where I can really explore what I want to do, and I can get better at drawing and writing and my photography, so I can really focus on like the creative aspects of things.
You develop as a person and not as this whole group of kids in a class learning the same thing.
What I worried about, the school when we first came ended up being what I saw as tremendous strengths. Age mixing, I think, is one of the best things about Sudbury.
I just really like being around like older and younger kids. I don't know. 14. 12. After you're 12. 12.
Because there isn't the hyper competitiveness, and also I think it's closer to real life.
Here at this school, all the students and all the staff, we all have equal authority.
The school meeting, it's a democratic committee. All the staff and all the students are all school meeting members.
All in favor to elect Trainer to be the JC?
It cultivates a very good atmosphere of respect and trust and responsibility. Everyone is a one-to-one vote.
As they grow, you see them take more and more control and believe more and more in their power.
Caliber of people that come out of Sudbury Schools is amazing. They're not adult phobic, they're articulate, they're respectful.
And the kids leave this and they do extraordinary things.
It's beautiful what happens here. I couldn't have picked a better place.
Today, the most radical form of schooling is something called unschooling. Homeschooling where the parent doesn't teach and there are no tests. The kids do whatever they want. And I was surprised to learn there are also schools that practice that. Kennedy checked one out in Massachusetts.
If I show up for school, what's my day?
Beats me.
At Sudbury Valley School, there are no classes, no tests, and no curriculum. Students are only required to show up for 5 hours a day.
When you get here, you have to check in.
Okay.
And when you leave, you have to check out. These are the only half-days in the day.
It's just so amazing to just come here every day and know that I can do whatever I want.
Sometimes what they want to do is play video games. Others play music for hours.
Why did you start Sudbury Valley School?
We had children. My wife and I had children, and our oldest child was getting to be school age. And it was a horrible prospect to put him through the regular school system. They do their best to destroy the natural interests, curiosity, and passions of children.
Here, nothing is forced on kids, not even learning to read.
Don't you think children will figure that out?
I learned to read when I was probably 11.
Yeah, I taught myself how to read.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I don't know, I just tried and tried.
One of the coolest things about being here is, like, I didn't know if I wanted to go to college last year. Because, like, when you go here, it's not like anybody's telling you, like, yeah, you need to go to college. My path, like, has led me to going to college.
At first, it seemed like there were no rules, but there are rules. It's just that the kids have an equal say in making the rules. One vote per kid.
The community decides everything. And by the community, I mean the collection of students and adults. There is no hierarchy here whatsoever.
When they opened the school, everyone was skeptical.
The lead lawyer was pacing back and forth on the floor. He said, 4-year-olds have the vote. My God, they'll just vote candy for themselves. The school will never run.
But that's not what happens. The kids run a court system.
So this is the meeting of the Judicial Committee.
Yep.
It's basically a school courtroom.
Yeah. So instead of going up and telling a teacher, blah, 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 did this, it's like a whole meeting.
But I'm so surprised they don't vote themselves candy if they really have this control.
Well, it's interesting because since they govern themselves, they're in charge of their own education, the kids are really in charge of the school, and they're much harder on themselves than any teachers or administrators would be. And you have kids ranging in age from 4 to 19. A bunch of 19-year-olds don't want 4-year-olds bouncing off the walls all high on sugar.
And we showed the kid playing video games. I would think, I mean, my son would have spent all day playing video games.
Yeah, that would be my worry, sending my girls to a school like this. And I think most parents feel that way. I was really surprised to see that many kids were gathered all different ages around computers with each other. They were collaborating. Many of them were in the art studio. They were painting. They were playing music.
All right, painting, playing music, but were any learning math and difficult things?
They say they do. I mean, it's a hard thing for an outsider to measure. We saw kids who were engaged on computers. They weren't necessarily playing computer games. They might have been doing really intense academic research, and many of them were sitting around reading by themselves.
And they must learn something because the parents choose this. It's a private school. They have to pay $8,000.
They do. And there are parents who are obviously non-traditional, for whom public school doesn't work. They don't like the model. It doesn't work for their kids. So they seek this school out as a way for their kids to really be in charge of themselves. And they trust. The trust is the most important thing. They trust their kids will learn.
And most do go to college.
85% of them, we were told by the founders, go on to college.
Now, I'd be nervous about enrolling my kids in an unschool. Parents told Kennedy what convinced them is that this school gets kids to like learning.
What is it about the school that attracted you?
Well, he wants to come, which has not been the case in several other schools. He told me the other day, he's like, Mom, wake me up for sure. I was like, who are you? What have you done with my teenager who sleeps till 2 in the afternoon?
It teaches you the real world.
What did you do in public school that's different from here?
Everything's different from public school.
Yeah.
From here. Because you get to have fun all day.
Go to a public school and you watch kids come out for recess and they're like being let out of prison. Our kids aren't like that. They're not in prison. They don't have to be like that.
How would you describe your school?
Awesome.
Your friends who go to other schools, are they jealous?
Yes.
If you were going to build your perfect school, what would it be like?
This.
Would it?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, the kids say it's perfect, but you want to go to college. Colleges want a transcript, grades, a
Yeah, there are no
record.
grades, there are no transcripts, there are no classes. There's nothing like that. They prepare themselves for the SAT. They teach themselves higher math. They organize their own education. Sometimes they kind of cram it in the last year, but they manage to get into college when they want to go.
There are now dozens of schools like this around the world. It It's hard to measure success when they don't take the standardized tests. But the fact that this is not new. That school was how old?
It's been around since 1968.
So
and
40
they said
years old. And
the hippies were the ones who gave them the hardest time. So they have survived and thrived regardless of people's political affiliations trying to keep them down.
You have kids. Would you send them?
I would think about non-traditional methods, and I was certainly intrigued by it, but like the founder said, there's a giant chasm to overcome in order to trust your kids to go there. I don't think I've overcome that chasm quite yet, but it is interesting.